I heard the words before I stepped fully into the room. She's basically already gone. For a brief second, I honestly believed they were talking about someone else. A patient, a distant relative, anyone but me. The sentence floated through the office in a calm, professional tone like a conclusion already agreed upon. Then he said my name. Once Evelyn signs, the house is free. My son's voice, steady, certain, detached. I stood frozen just inside the doorway, my hand still on the doorframe, listening as if I were invisible. As if I had already disappeared the way he described. According to him, I wasn't a living woman anymore. I was a formality, a signature, a problem waiting to be cleared. She's not really there anymore, Daniel continued. Mentally, emotionally, it's just easier this way. Something cold crawled up my spine. Not fear, not shock, something sharper, like dignity being peeled away layer by layer. The lawyer hesitated, I could hear it in his voice. Mr. Carter, your mother is still legally. That's when my feet moved on their own. Legally what? My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Both men turned at the same time. Daniel went pale instantly, like a child caught stealing something he believed he deserved. The lawyer stood up too quickly, knocking his chair back. Mrs. Carter, I didn't realize you were. I heard enough, I said. I walked further into the room, every step steady, even though my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I had spent most of my life as a nurse. I had stood beside deathbeds, delivered terrible news, stitched wounds with shaking hands. Nothing prepared me for hearing my own child erase me while I was still breathing. Daniel couldn't meet my eyes. You weren't supposed to hear that, he muttered. But I did, I replied calmly. And I imagine this isn't the first time you've said it. Lawyer excused himself quickly, murmuring something about privacy. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving me alone with the boy I once carried on my hip. Mom, Daniel sighed, rubbing his forehead. You're taking this the wrong way, I'm under pressure. The house is worth a lot, you don't even use most of it. Ah, there it was, not concern, not love, square footage. I drove myself here, I said. I cook my own meals, I pay my bills, I tend my garden. When exactly did I disappear, Daniel? What year was it? Silence. He reached for my arm. Let's go home, you need rest. I pulled away. Rest, I said quietly. That's the word people use when they want you quiet. I walked past him and out into the hallway, my legs trembling, not from age but from something waking up inside me. By the time I stepped outside, the air felt sharper, cleaner, like a decision had already been made somewhere deep inside my bones. Before the story continues. If you're watching this right now, comment your city name below, I love knowing where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful emotional stories like this one. Now let's continue. The walk home felt longer than usual. Same cracked sidewalk, same trees, same houses, but everything looked clearer, like my eyes had finally adjusted to a truth I'd been avoiding. When I unlocked my front door, the house felt still, waiting for me. My house. The one Daniel spoke of like an object already removed from my life. I stood in the living room, looking around. The quilt I sewed at 42, the lamp from a former patient, the photo of my husband Robert laughing, head thrown back, eyes full of life. If I was basically already gone, then why did every corner of this house still know me? I sat in Robert's old chair, my hands trembling slightly, not from weakness, from clarity. Basically already gone, I whispered. The words didn't break me, they hardened me. Anger at my age doesn't scream. It sits, it remembers, every loan, every favor. Every time I bent so my son wouldn't have to, the phone rang, Daniel, I didn't answer. For the first time I understood something with perfect clarity. I didn't owe him my fear. I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. White hair, soft lines, clear eyes, not gone, not fading. And as I stood there, one truth settled firmly in my chest. Daniel had already planned my disappearance, but I would decide what actually vanished from my life. And it wouldn't be me. Daniel thought the house was already his. What he didn't know was that I was about to make a decision that would change everything. Sophia always knocked twice. Soft, gentle, as if she was asking permission to enter my world instead of assuming it belonged to her. That afternoon, the sound came while I was folding laundry, slowly, deliberately trying to keep my hands busy so my thoughts wouldn't run wild. Grandma, her voice floated through the screen door. Are you home? I opened the door, and the moment her eyes met mine, she knew. Some grandchildren inherit cheekbones or smiles. Sophia inherited intuition. Her gaze moved over my face like a careful scan, my stiff shoulders, the tightness around my mouth, the way my hands trembled just slightly. What happened? She asked, stepping inside and closing the door behind her with unusual care. I sat at the kitchen table. The sunlight streaming through the window felt too bright for the weight pressing against my chest. Sophia took the chair across from me, leaning forward, elbows on her knees, waiting. No rushing, no interrupting, just presence. I went to see a lawyer today, I began, her eyebrows lifted. Why, your father was there. Something shifted in her expression, not shock, recognition. As if some part of her had already been bracing for this conversation, I told her everything, not dramatically, not angrily, just facts. The way Daniel spoke about me, the way he reduced my life to paperwork and property, the way he talked about my absence like a guarantee. When I finished, the kitchen felt unbearably quiet. He said that, she whispered. Dad actually said you were already gone, I nodded once. Sophia leaned back slowly, her jaw tightening. She wasn't crying. Her eyes shone, but it wasn't sadness. It was anger, controlled, focused. He's been talking about the house a lot lately, she said. Saying it's too much for you, saying it should be used better. Used better, I repeated softly. She hesitated. There's something else. I waited. Last month, she continued, Mom asked him how long you'd be able to live alone. He said, her voice faltered, that you wouldn't make a fuss, that you trusted him too much to push back. The words landed heavier than I expected, not because they surprised me, but because they explained everything. He didn't just underestimate me, he counted on my silence. Sophia reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was firm, grounding. You don't deserve this. I know, I said quietly. But thank you for saying it. What are you going to do? She asked. I looked out the window at the old swing in the yard, the one Daniel used to pump his legs on so hard I feared he'd launch himself into the sky. I remembered pushing him, laughing, making the world safe for him. I don't know yet, I admitted, but I know I can't ignore this. I'll help you, she said immediately. I don't care if he's my dad, what he's doing is wrong. I squeezed her hand gently. I won't put you in the middle. I've been in the middle for years, she replied. I just didn't say it out loud. We sat together in silence for a while, not awkward, not heavy, just honest. Before she left, she turned at the door. If you ever need a lawyer or help reading paperwork or just someone to sit with you, promise me you won't do it alone. I promise, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew something else was true. This was something I had to begin myself. That night I didn't sleep, not from fear, not even from anger. It was alertness, the kind I used to feel during night shifts at the hospital when every sound mattered, when rest had to wait because clarity was more important. By morning, I knew what I needed to do. I needed to see Daniel again, not to argue, not to plead, just to hear him fully. To look directly at the man he had become. He arrived earlier than expected. I had barely finished making tea when I heard his car door slam. He didn't knock. He never did. He pushed the door open like someone entering a space he believed already belonged to him. Mom, he called. We need to talk. I stayed seated. Then come in, I said calmly. He appeared in the doorway, tense, jacket still on, irritation already sharpening his tone. You left without saying anything yesterday. I've been calling. I know. Well, why didn't you answer? Because I didn't want to. That stopped him. He wasn't used to hearing no, not from me. Mom, he said, forcing patience into his voice, this isn't the time to be stubborn. What I heard yesterday wasn't confusion, I replied. It was clarity. You're twisting things, he snapped. You always get emotional. I'm not emotional, I said evenly. I'm listening. He sighed, already frustrated. You're 74, this house is old, it needs work, I'm trying to plan ahead. Plan for who? I asked. He didn't answer. And in that silence, I finally understood something painful and freeing at the same time. Daniel had already decided my future. He just hadn't expected me to notice. That morning, I still believed Daniel might listen. I was wrong. Daniel didn't sit down right away. He stood in the middle of my kitchen like the room was a courtroom and he was waiting for permission to speak, permission he fully expected to be granted. Mom, he said, rubbing his forehead, you're not seeing the bigger picture. I see it clearly, I replied, lifting my teacup. You just don't like what I see. His jaw tightened. This isn't about liking anything, it's about safety. You fall sometimes, you forget things. I remember this conversation perfectly, I said. So far, I'm doing better than you. He ignored that. You can't keep living alone in a house this big, he continued. It's not reasonable. Reasonable for who? I asked. For everyone, he snapped. There it was again, that imaginary group he hid behind when he didn't want to say me. He pulled out a chair and finally sat, leaning forward like a man closing a deal. Listen, he said. If you sign the transfer, I can sell the house. You'll have a room in a nice assisted place. Nurses, activities, people your age, you won't have to worry about anything. I set my cup down carefully. I'm not worried now, I said. I live in my own home, I cook, I walk to the store, I read, I see Lena. Being unreasonable, he said sharply. You're acting like I'm trying to hurt you. A pause settled between us. You are, I said quietly, you just don't realize it. He pushed his chair back abruptly. I don't have time for this, I'm trying to help you, why can't you see that? Because help is offered, I replied. Not forced. I looked at him then, not as my son, but as a man who had grown comfortable taking without asking. He wasn't cruel in the dramatic way villains are. He was worse. He was entitled. How long have you been planning this? I asked. He looked away, that was my answer. Daniel, I said gently, when did I stop being your mother and start being your inconvenience? He sighed heavily, the sound of a man tired of resistance. Don't make this dramatic, you're old, the house is old, this is just practical. I'm not signing anything, I said. He froze. Excuse me. I said no. His eyes flashed with disbelief. You can't make these decisions alone. I've been making decisions alone since your father died, I replied. You just didn't notice. He stood so fast his chair scraped loudly across the floor. This is unbelievable, he said. After everything I've done for you. What have you done for me? I asked calmly. The question hung in the air. He opened his mouth, closed it, searched for something, anything, and found nothing. His silence told me everything I needed to know. We're not finished, he snapped, grabbing his jacket. We are, I said. He stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the picture frames. The quiet afterward felt strange, not empty, spacious. I sat there for a long moment, listening to my own breathing. For decades, my instinct would have been to chase him, to explain, to soften things. I didn't move. The woman who smoothed things over had finally stood up. The next morning, I woke before dawn, not restless, focused. I dressed simply and left the house without telling anyone where I was going. The law office was quiet when I arrived. The receptionist looked surprised to see me alone. I'd like to speak to Mr. Collins, I said. He handled my husband's estate. Something in my voice made her nod without question. When he came out, he smiled politely. Mrs. Carter, it's been a long time. Yes, I said, and I need your help. Inside his office, I sat down, my hands warm, steady. I need to protect my home, I said, and my autonomy. His expression didn't change, but I could tell he understood immediately. Is someone pressuring you to sign documents? He asked. Yes, your son. Yes, he nodded slowly. Then we need safeguards. He explained my rights clearly, calmly. I was legally competent. No one could force my signature. No one could take control unless I allowed it. Do you want to revoke your son's access to your legal matters? He asked. Yes. He wrote it down without hesitation. As we went through each step, something lifted from my shoulders. With every decision, I felt myself returning, not to anger but to ownership. When it was done, he looked at me carefully. Your son may not take this well. I'm not doing it for him, I said. I'm doing it for me. Outside, the cold air stung my cheeks, but I welcomed it. Daniel thought he was planning my ending. He had no idea I'd just started writing my defense. Daniel believed control would come quietly. He didn't realize I was about to remove every door he walked through without knocking. When I returned home from the lawyer's office, I didn't sit down right away. Instead, I walked through the house slowly, touching things as I passed them, the back of a chair, the edge of a picture frame, the wooden bowl Robert carved with hands that were never patient but always loving. This wasn't hesitation. It was preparation. I went to the hallway drawer, the one I'd always kept overly organized. Inside were neatly labeled folders I'd accumulated over decades. Utilities, insurance, home repairs, medical, and one folder thicker than the rest, family support. I carried everything to the kitchen table and sat down. The chair creaked under my weight like it understood something important was happening. I opened the first folder. Short-term loan Daniel, 12 years ago, $4,000 for temporary car trouble. Temporary never came back. Next, private school fees. I'd paid the enrollment, uniforms, books, thousands, all because I was told it would give the kids a better start. Another page. Emergency home repairs, his house, his contractor's mistake, my check, then a thick envelope, credit card consolidation. Daniel had cried on the phone that night, said he was drowning, said he didn't know what else to do. I wired the money without thinking. I sat there nearly an hour, flipping through receipts and notes. Not bitter, not angry, clear. This didn't happen overnight. I had helped him grow comfortable expecting. My phone buzzed. Daniel, Mom, call me. We need to straighten out yesterday. Straighten out, as if I had bent something. I placed the phone face down. I wasn't done. I opened another folder, one I rarely touched. Robert, estate and medical. His handwriting stared back at me from old notes and lists. He never doubted my judgment, never questioned my mind, never spoke about my future without me sitting beside him. I closed the folder gently, that was the difference. Robert had walked with me. Daniel was trying to move me. I gathered all the documents, every receipt, every record, every quiet proof of a lifetime of giving and placed them into one box beside my chair. Not for revenge, for truth. 2 days passed. Then Daniel came back. I saw his car through the window before he knocked, or rather, before he opened the door like it was his. Mom, he said sharply. We're talking now. I stayed seated. Hello, Daniel. That stopped him. He shut the door hard. Why haven't you returned my calls? I wasn't ready. That's not how family works. I let the silence answer him. He sat across from me, leaning forward again, same posture, same assumption. Look, he said, lowering his voice, I know I shouldn't have said what I did, but walking out like that, it made things harder. For whom? I asked. He hesitated. For all of us, he finally said. He pulled out the familiar script. From a practical standpoint, you're planning for yourself, I interrupted. His jaw twitched. You're planning renovations, I continued calmly. Contractors, sales, futures that don't include me. He stiffened. You don't understand what's coming. If I don't sign, you're worried, I said. That's why you're pushing. Silence. Then quietly, you're being selfish. I almost smiled. After a lifetime of giving, he stood abruptly. We'll talk when you calm down. No, I replied. Talk when you listen. He left furious. That night I slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning I took the bus downtown. I didn't want Daniel noticing my car gone. He'd started driving past more often, watching. The financial office was warm and smelled like polished wood. The advisor, a young woman with steady eyes, greeted me. You want to set up a trust? She asked. Yes, I said, for my granddaughter. Name, Lena Carter. The words felt right. And when should it activate? She asked. Immediately, I replied, quietly. Her pen paused, then continued. She explained everything carefully. This trust would protect my assets, my home, my choices. Your son won't be able to override this, she said. Are you certain? I thought of Daniel's voice. She's basically already gone. I'm certain, I said. I signed. My hand didn't shake. On the way home, something hummed inside me, not triumph, not anger, alignment. That evening, I received another message. Daniel, we need to finalize paperwork for the house. I didn't answer. He didn't know it yet, but every door he once walked through without knocking was now closed. Daniel thought silence meant I was giving in. He had no idea I'd just locked every door he planned to use. Daniel didn't wait long. The day after I ignored his last message, he showed up again, but this time he didn't storm in. He moved slower, deliberate, careful, like a man who had finally realized force wouldn't work. That alone told me everything. He stepped into the kitchen while I was peeling potatoes, his voice softer than I'd heard in years. Mom, we need to talk. I didn't look up. I finished slicing, set the knife down, and wiped my hands. Then talk. He exhaled slowly, sitting across from me. I've been thinking, maybe we both said things we didn't mean. I meant everything I said, I replied. His smile faltered. All right, he said, adjusting his tone. You're overwhelmed, lawyers, paperwork. It's a lot. I handled it, I said calmly. His eyes flickered. Handled what? I met with my lawyer, I continued. I reviewed everything. The color drained from his face just enough that I noticed. You didn't need to do that, he said quickly. You should have waited for me. I would have explained things. I understand them perfectly. He laughed under his breath. Mom, these things are complicated. They were very clear. Silence. What did you sign? He finally asked. I signed protections, I said. I revoked old permissions, cleaned up accounts. He stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. You can't do that without talking to me. I just did. This affects all of us, he snapped. No, I replied. It affects me. He paced once, running his hands through his hair. What about the house? He demanded. It stays with me. You're ruining everything I've planned, he said bitterly. Yes, I said. I am. He stared at me then, really stared. Like he was finally seeing someone he didn't recognize. This conversation isn't finished, he said. It is, I replied. He left quietly, too quietly. That evening Lena came over. She didn't knock loudly. She never did. Dad looks scared, she said as soon as she sat down. Is everything okay? It is now, I told her. I didn't give details, just the truth. I took control of my life back. She studied me for a moment, then smiled. You look lighter, she said. I feel steadier. She hugged me before leaving. A real hug, not rushed, not distracted. After she left, I sat alone in the quiet. For once, it didn't feel empty. Daniel believed he could scare me into surrender. He hadn't realized fear no longer lived here. Daniel returned 3 days later. This time he knocked. It wasn't a gentle knock, not polite either. But it was a knock, and that alone told me something had shifted. When I opened the door, he stood there stiffly, eyes red, jaw tight, like a man who hadn't slept because the ground beneath him no longer felt solid. Mom, he said. We need to talk. I stepped aside. Then come in. He didn't sit. He paced the living room once, then turned to face me. I went to the bank, he said. My pulse didn't change. And, I asked. They told me I'm no longer listed on anything. Accounts, authorizations, emergency access. His voice sharpened. What did you do? What I needed to do. That's not an answer, he snapped, then caught himself. Mom, this is serious. You can't just cut me out. I can, I said calmly. And I did. He stepped closer. Why? The word trembled, not with curiosity but disbelief. Because you were using my access against me, I replied. Because you planned my future without asking if I wanted it. I was trying to help you. No, I said. You were trying to manage me. He laughed bitterly. Is this Lena talking? She didn't have to, I said. You said everything yourself. His face darkened. So that's it, he said. You're choosing her over me. I'm choosing myself. That stopped him cold. He stared at me like the idea had never occurred to him that I had a self separate from his plans. You're making a huge mistake, he said. What happens when something goes wrong? Who's going to take care of you? I will. You can't, he blurted out. I looked at him steadily. Say it, he swallowed. Say what you mean. He couldn't because saying it would strip away the disguise of concern. Mom, he tried again, softer now. I'm responsible for you. No, Daniel, I said firmly. You're responsible for your life. I'm responsible for mine. His voice cracked with frustration. This isn't how families work. No, I agreed, but it's how boundaries work. He turned toward the door. We'll finish this later. This time, I said, you don't decide when it ends. He left quietly. For the first time, fear wasn't in my chest. It was in his eyes. Daniel thought control came from authority. He was about to learn it comes from law. I had known this day would come. The moment when quiet decisions made behind closed doors would need witnesses. When everything Daniel believed he could undo with pressure would be placed firmly beyond his reach. My lawyer, Mr. Collins, scheduled the meeting for Friday morning. Your son may come, he warned gently over the phone. He has a right to ask questions. He does not have the right to interfere. That's fine, I said. Let him ask. The office was calm when I arrived, soft lighting, clean lines, the faint scent of ink and polished wood. A place where emotions didn't rule and words carried weight. I sat across from Mr. Collins as he laid the documents out carefully. The trust naming Lena as beneficiary, the revocation of all previous authorizations, the notarized declaration of my full legal capacity. Clear instructions regarding my home, finances, and autonomy, everything clean, precise, unemotional. We were halfway through reviewing them when the door opened sharply. Daniel, he entered like someone used to arriving late and still taking charge. His eyes flicked to the documents, then to Mr. Collins, and finally to me. Mom, he said. What is this? I gestured toward the empty chair beside me. Sit. He didn't. Mrs. Carter is finalizing legal directives, Mr. Collins said evenly. You're welcome to listen. She doesn't understand what she's signing, Daniel snapped. I understand perfectly, I said. He turned to me, lowering his voice. Please think about this. Once you sign, I won't have any involvement. I know, and you're okay with that? I'm relieved by it. That hit harder than anger ever could. Mr. Collins adjusted his glasses. Your mother has undergone a cognitive assessment. She scored above average. She understands every clause. Daniel went silent. For a moment, I saw something real on his face, fear. Not of losing me, of losing control. Families don't do this, he muttered. Families, I replied quietly, don't plan each other's disappearance. Mr. Collins slid the final document toward me. I signed, steady hand, clear name. With every stroke, I felt something return to its rightful place inside me. Legally finalized, Mr. Collins said. Daniel stood frozen, like a man watching a door close that he'd never imagined locked. I stood, put on my coat, and looked at my son not with anger but with truth. I'm your mother, I said softly. Not your possession, you don't get to organize my ending. He opened his mouth but nothing came out. I walked past him and out the door. For the first time he didn't follow. Daniel believed I'd never go that far. He was wrong. The morning after the documents were signed, the house felt different. Not bigger, not emptier, just settled. I woke without the familiar tension in my chest, the one that made me listen for footsteps, car doors, raised voices. For years, I hadn't realized how much space Daniel occupied in my mind, even when he wasn't present. How often I waited for the next request disguised as concern. That morning, I didn't wait. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table without glancing at the door. No anticipation. No readiness to explain myself, just quiet. Later, I went to my desk under the window and pulled out paperwork I hadn't touched in years. Bank forms, insurance policies, old authorizations with Daniel's name written neatly beside mine back when temporary still sounded harmless. I revoked them one by one, changed passwords, updated emergency contacts, removed his number as a backup on every account, not out of anger, out of clarity. By noon, my hands were tired, but my mind felt lighter. I placed the updated documents into a fresh folder labeled current and slid it to the front of the drawer. My phone vibrated. Daniel, we need to finalize the house paperwork tonight. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, Daniel, please be reasonable. I've already spoken to a contractor. I stared at the message. Contractor. He was planning renovations on a house that was no longer his to imagine. I set the phone face down and stepped outside onto the porch. The air was crisp. Cars passed. Leaves rustled. Life continued without consulting Daniel's plans. That evening, Lena came by quietly and sat beside me without asking questions. She sensed the shift the way she always did. You're okay, she said softly. I am, I replied. And for the first time, the words didn't feel like reassurance. They felt like fact. Daniel didn't show up that night. But I knew he would soon. Silence had never meant acceptance with him, only recalculation. Daniel believed the fight was over. He hadn't realized the truth was about to reach him fully. Daniel came the following afternoon. Not angry this time, not demanding, defeated but still hoping for an opening. I was in the garden when he arrived, kneeling in the soil, hands dirty, sun warm on my back. I didn't rush to stand when I heard him approach. You look busy, he said. I am, I replied. He lingered a moment, then cleared his throat. I spoke to my lawyer. I kept working. He says everything's legal, Daniel continued. That I don't have standing. That's correct. He sighed heavily and sat on the edge of the porch step. I don't understand why you're doing this to me. I finally looked up. I'm not doing anything to you, I said gently. I'm doing something for myself. He shook his head. I was just trying to make sure you were taken care of. No, I said. You were trying to make sure you were comfortable. That truth landed quietly but firmly. You always taught me to plan ahead, he said weakly. Yes, I replied, not to erase people before they're gone. He stared at the ground. For the first time I saw him without the armor of authority, just a man facing the consequences of assuming love meant access. I don't know where this leaves us, he said. I stood and brushed the dirt from my hands. It leaves us with honesty, I said, and boundaries. Does that mean I'm cut off? He asked. I met his eyes. It means you're my son, I said. Not my decision maker, not my executor, not my replacement. He nodded slowly. I'll call before coming next time, he said. That would be appropriate. He left shortly after, no slammed doors, no threats, no drama, just acceptance. Later that evening, I sat alone in the living room as the sun dipped low, painting the walls gold. The house didn't feel like a prize anymore. It felt like home again. I thought about the words Daniel had used weeks ago. She's basically already gone. I smiled softly. I wasn't gone. I was finally here, fully present, fully capable, fully mine. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't sacrifice, it's self-respect. And sometimes the story doesn't end with reconciliation, it ends with peace.